Evening. I am, my name's Judy Riege, and this is actually, let's see, workshop number 2, and I feel like I've had a bit of a cool conversation with a number of you. I see some names of people who've been here before. Tonight's a little bit different. Tonight's I'm a little bit about you, and it's for you. And I want to take you through a process that actually I take most of my leaders and coaches through usually in January. So the executive coaching practice that I have, or some of the senior sport leaders that I work with every January, we kind of say, okay, what's our 2.0 plan, or in some cases 3.0 or 4.0 plan for how you want to show up this year. And so I hope you have pen and paper. There is actually kind of a handout or PDF in FeedLoop that you can download and use, or if you've got a printer nearby, or use as a guide and write in your notebook. But tonight's session really is going to be about you and for you. So I know as a group we don't tend to love to chit chat with me. I would love it if you would be willing to turn your cameras on so at least you know you're here. You can use the chat to ask a question. You can kind of unmute and lean in. That would be awesome. It would help me kind of know that you're there. If you're eating dinner, I don't care if you're eating and listening. That's totally cool too. But I'm going to kind of switch a little bit between me and the camera to a few slides I've got, and then also kind of my scratch pad, my iPad. I want to draw a few things with you tonight. So I'm going to start first with a drawing, a formula that I use quite often. And let's see if I can switch the orientation. There we go. Here's what I want to start tonight, is this idea of this formula. Be times do equals have. Who do you need to be multiplied by what do you need to do will get you what you want to have, or what your goal is. And so for many of us, when we talk about goal setting in the coaching context, in the leadership context, in the organizational context, we're usually pretty good. Here's what I want to have by the end of the year. And then we usually sort of build this really long to-do list. But one of the things we don't ever do is, in my experience, many people do not actually build this list here, the to-be list. And here's what happens in my experience, working with leaders and busy coaches, is that the less attention I spend thinking about how I'm being, or what I need to be my best, and I just focus on staying busy and doing what I always do. I actually, let's assume today you guys are fired up, you got a full tank of gas, you're feeling good, and you're at your 1.0. What I see more and more often than not over time is that this number gets smaller. And then it gets smaller, because we're not actually filling our tank or paying attention to the energy we're bringing into giving ourselves or bringing into the world. And so this really awesome list of things to do just starts to actually drain our tank. And we don't necessarily get where we want to go. And we start to get frustrated, irritated, annoyed at the pandemic or other people. And so we become a victim to the situation. So tonight I want to talk about this idea of, going back to my formula, I want to talk about kind of this idea of what's your you 2.0. Much like the computer software updates that you have to download regularly into your computer, what are the places and spaces, or if we looked at September, even though we're near the end of it, as kind of this renewal, refresh, or new start, what would the 2.0 version of you look like? Because I think the most important thing we have to do if we're going to start to reimagine swimming in Ontario is we actually have to reimagine ourselves. Because what got us here isn't necessarily going to get us where we want to go next. So here's my focus for tonight. I want to talk a little bit around more about my B times do equals have formula. And I want to take you through the steps, if you're willing, around how do you create your own 2.0 plan on a page. what are some of the steps? What are some of the things we're doing, and why is it important for us to do this? And here's the thing that I would offer up to you is this is a great process to take our athletes through, mini versions of it. Because if we actually are continually to evolve and grow our own mindset and grow our own capacity to be our best, then we start to become the role models and start to frame the conversations that helps do that with the athletes, the parents, and those that we work with. It's simple, but it isn't always easy because it requires a little bit of extra attention or an intention to be able to make it work. So for this nice small group that's here this morning or this afternoon, evening, I'm wondering if any of you would be willing to share with me one thing for you that you find like the most difficult, challenging things that cause you to get out of your best game. What are some of the things about work right now or the world you're living in or your coaching space you find the most irritating, the most frustrating, the most exhausting? If you'd be willing to put in the chat or turn your camera on and lean in and say, what are the problems that, that we might want to kind of try and solve as we sort of shift our own mindset?
All right, Judy, I will start. Is that okay?
Absolutely it is.
Perfect. Getting distracted by things that aren't on the same I guess maybe the same page as I am.
Okay.
Distraction has always been, I think, an evil of sorts. So.
I don't know if you're anything like me, Dean. I suffer from shiny penny syndrome or new idea syndrome too.
Stu, are you nodding in that? Are you nodding in that agreement, or is that you're talking to somebody?
Sorry, I didn't realize my camera was on.
She said something about a shiny penny, and I thought you were agreeing. Yeah, that could be where Dean is sometimes. Not so much shiny penny, but definitely trying to come up with schemes of trying to move things forward. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How about balance, Judy?
Tell me more about that.
Well, I thought, to be honest, I thought maybe the simplified model of my existence during this whole lockdown-y thing that we had going on, I thought I'd be able to find a better balance of work, family, attention to myself. But it didn't really happen. It didn't really play out the way I thought.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, you're saying spread too thin across too many things, right? So this idea of how do I want to show up, my you 2.0, what it is. So I don't know if you can see behind me, but I've got frames around my head in the back of me. And it's actually a habit and a practice I started 8 years ago. So what I'm going to share with you is something I've been playing with in myself for 8 years, because one of the things that I learned is that because I'm a creature of habit, just like we are, and changing our behavior is actually requires some intention and practice, I decided that so I've expanded what I'm going to share with you, but my simple version of you 2.0, or how I'm going to be more, was actually picking one word. And so the words actually on my wall are the words that were my themes of the year. How did I want to feel more of? What did I want to do more of? How I was going to bring those words into my reality. And so I don't know if you can see them. So one of the first words I said was love. What would happen if I actually practiced connecting? Because love is at the base of us, love is the emotion of connection and warmth. And I was the queen of so freaking busy that I said, what would happen if I actually looked at every day and went, how do I bring a little bit more connection, a little bit more love, and a little bit more warmth to myself, to my clients, to the work that I do, to my family, to my friends? And so I started to make a list. So what would love look like? What would it sound like? And what would it feel like when I got up in the morning, when I went to bed at night? There's other words there. Play. Play. Oh my gosh, play was 2020's word. During the pandemic, I'm like, what the heck am I going to do with that? So I decided to unpack that word. Play started to stand for putting love, learning, and laughter around yourself. So that was my whole goal during the pandemic lockdown was, what could I learn? What could I love more? And where could I create laughter? And who was it I needed to have around me to do that? But here's the thing is I believe words have power, and I also believe that intention sets direction. And so if we want to become a better version of ourselves, we have to think about small things often. A lot of times when we think about kind of, I have to be whatever, balance. Sometimes we kind of have it as this grandiose thing that we go from 0 to perfect in about 2.5 months. It's like me thinking if I'm going to lose weight or exercise more, I just started really small. So this year, my word is move. And so my goal is every day I have to move for 30 minutes. I can do yoga, I can walk, I can run, I can bike, I can do whatever. And I track it every day. I have this little thing on my wall, and every day I write a little code. And I have this thing that I call better than nothing. So if I actually don't even feel like it, my better than nothing is anything I did. So if it was 10 or 15 minutes, I still write down I had a better than nothing day. So here's what I want to go to when we talk about You 2.0 for us as leaders and coaches. This is not about being perfect. This is not being about better than. This is about being a little bit better than yesterday. And James Clear, who has written this great book, and anything you've ever read about habits, there's Charles Duhigg and there's others. One of the things we know is that it takes time and practice and effort to create new habits. And one thing we don't have as human beings is very good willpower. So when we make what we want visible, we make it actually exciting or interesting. And sometimes too, if we actually invite people to join us on that journey and have an accountability partner or 6, it's amazing what we can do. So going back to tonight's goal, who do you want to be? What do you really want to do this year? To have a season or a year that you go, that was good. Or at least it was better than last year. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be great. So let's start at start. When I think of any person I ever work with, I start with this idea of every single person that I work with, meet, hang out, is like a little Venn diagram. I mean, obviously they're more than that. They have a story, they have a way of being, but every single one of us is a combination of our experience, our expertise, and our energy. And so a lot of us think about do, and we build and grow the experience and expertise buckets, but we don't always pay attention to the energy bucket. And when I think about my energy is like my personal Wi-Fi signal that I'm sending out into the world. It's how I'm being. And if I have low energy, chances are it's kind of hard to connect with me. Or maybe it's not there's a lot of that like in Zoom calls where there's this, oh, you're frozen. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you're on mute. So if you look at my silly little Venn diagram, here's what I would love for you to just pause for a second. I hope you have a pen and paper. Where you see those 3 question marks, I want you to think about this idea, starting at start. If you were to say by the end of this season, or if you wanted people to actually describe you in 3 words that would make you feel proud and good, what would be the 3 qualities that you would like to be known for or feel more of in the next year, between now and September 2022? What would be 3 qualities that you would put on your to-be list? And we're going to start to unpack that, because one of the things you'll see as I wrote in the handout that goes with tonight's workshop is we measure our days a lot of times by what we do. And for many of us, scratching things off of our to-do list is unbelievably satisfying. But it's interesting, we measure our lives or the lives of others by who we are. And so our daily to-do list spreads us thin because it's always urgent. But it's actually a bit of a sugar rush. It's a short-term kind of like reward. Look at all the things I scratched off. But one of the things that we know as human beings is we're hardwired for connection. So being always in busy and doing mode isn't actually nourishing to us. And it doesn't help us grow the essence or the energy that we put out into the world. So our to-do list, while important, if it's not matched with an equally valuable or intentional or well thought through to-be list, then all this effort we have potentially could be unrecognized, unseen, unknown, or ineffective. So if you've got the 3 qualities on your to-be list, and you're sort of thinking about what's the kind of energy I want to put out into the world, right? So I want you to sit with those 3 words. And I want you to kind of go, okay, now, if those 3 words were walking around the pool or walking in the office or even walking in the house at the end of the day, what would they say? What would they do? What would they think? So my example for move for this year was I started to go, okay, if I am in a space where move is a word that I'm going to embody in my energy, I looked at it personally. Okay, what am I going to move forward this year personally? So I looked at my health and said, these are 3 things I want to change personally around my health. Move them forward. So I defined that. On my work front, I said, okay, how do I do work that actually moves people forward? Helps them elevate their thinking and maybe move forward in this crazy, busy, overwhelming, overloading world in a way that we say, okay, here I go. I have a little bit of courage or hopefully a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of clarity around the skill I might want to try practicing that would help me move forward with a little bit more confidence than I was feeling. That's the stuff I'm trying to do, is trying to break down some of this stuff, and hopefully it's of value to you and others that you'd be willing to try. I looked at what it looked like in my family. And so we played with what were some of the things as a family we were going to move forward. Hobbies, activities, fun, whatever it is, we built a list. That was what we were going to move forward this year. So you can look at this just at work, or you can look at this holistically, or you can look at it in your just in the frame of who shows up at the pool. But when you walk through the doors into the pool, what energy are you going to bring in every day? Because that energy is the connective tissue that's going to start to actually help other people learn from us and with us. Okay, I'm going to kind of keep going and walk you through, but here's the next piece of the puzzle that I would love for you to play with. One of the things I know to be true in most of the work with coaches so far is coaches focus forward and they never pause, and often enough, leaders and coaches, to go, what did we do? What did we accomplish? What was good? And so in order for me to know how to want to be better and do better, one of the things that I think is really important for coaches and leaders is to actually pause and go, what are my wins? And so I would love for you, just, underneath your to-be list, put the numbers 1 to 20 down there and challenge yourself to build a list of what are 21 things. 21's your bonus one. What are 21 things I learned, did, accomplished, survived? What are all my wins from the last year? Hopefully you're madly scratching those down. We're naturally more negative than we are positive. And so if we don't actually hang out in the spaces of joy or what is good, we'll actually miss them. For those of us leading clubs and organizations, actually one of the greatest things I believe leaders can do is regularly share in their communication to the groups that they connect with, whether it's coach to athlete or club administrator to the coaches, or even to the larger community. Here's what we're working on. Here's the progress we made. Here are the wins, not just in the pool, but the kind of things that we're seeing, hearing, and knowing that are happening and makes us feel like coming to work works. So 20 things if you can. Simple, not easy. When we start and take stock, right, of where we are starting from, it's easy for us to grow this bigger to be list. So where are you starting from? What were your accomplishments? Then I want you to think about what were your top 3 disappointments or setbacks. And I challenge you not to just say COVID. What was it about the pandemic actually got in the way? What was it about it that really bothered you? Was there an initiative, a competition, a place and space you wanted to try, a trip? Write down the 3 disappointments, setbacks, or failures from this year. Now, as you look at your list, and hopefully you looked at the 3 qualities of how you want to be in this next year, what are you learning? Are some of those qualities that you want to feel or be more of, do they live on the really good list? Oh, wait a minute, I was like that. Okay, this is good. If I focus on the good, maybe that's what I notice, and that's how that energy starts to show up. How big of a gap is did you win and what did you do, and what do these new energy words or your B words, what do they help you think about? What's inspiring? What's motivating? Reflection is the birthplace of learning and growth. If you're familiar with the term fixed versus growth mindset, Carol Dweck says, when we set an intention and we have a belief that we can become better, and we put the processes in place, we remind ourselves we can continually really learn every single day. So in this idea of finding the good, I don't know if you've even heard the science of 3 good things. We actually build gray matter, and we actually elevate our mood when we practice gratitude every day. What are 3 good things? 3 things, amazing things about my day. 3 things that I'm grateful for. It's a really fun game to play with your kids, or even your athletes when they come in or leave. So yes, Brian, when you say I need to be, wouldn't that be cool if your to-be list was grateful? And you just started to play the game of 3. 3 amazing things, 3 good things about every kid. I have to play the game all the time with my teenagers. Okay, what are 3 things about you right now that I can actually love and appreciate when you're driving me crazy? Because usually they're not trying to drive me crazy. It's my own internal state, right? Or I'm not understanding, or I'm not, asking questions. But there really is. If you Google the science of 3 good things, or another website that's really great to elevate your B list is the Greater Good Science Center of Berkeley, California, because I just love everything in there. So they have a podcast, The Science of Happiness. And it's really great because it does allow us, so they'll talk about the science behind certain habits, and then they have these practices. They say, okay, try this practice. And if you're a listener, the podcast will do the practice in your ear when you're on a walk or whatever, or you can read it online. But they do talk an awful lot about when we actually practice gratitude, and we show our young people how to do that too. What is good? What is working? What are you grateful for? What progress are you seeing? What were 21 things that you actually rocked and did really well this year? I know I'm hammering it a little bit, but starting at start means really getting clear for ourselves and others What are the gifts that we already have that we can build from? So that our to-be list is not like I'm starting from a clean slate. It's actually like a piece of Lego. I'm adding on to it. This year, my being is going to be these 3 things. Or if you want to take a page out of my book, you can pick one word. But I always made sure that the 3 around it was, what does it look like in my home? What does it look like in my personal life? Like for me personally, and then what does it look like at work? What am I giving? What am I doing? Putting out into the world. So all of this that we're trying to do here, or that I'm offering up to you, is really that skill of self-awareness. It's actually pausing in the moment and going, where am I? And who do I want to be? And what do I want to do? And some of this for me was learned from some pretty brutal feedback I learned early in my career about my leadership style. When I was told by my own staff that, you know, my reputation was that of being a bit of a dictator. So they used to call me Dick. And I wasn't very happy about getting that feedback. But once I got really curious around how did she show up? Who was she being? What did she say? What did she do? Then I started to go, okay, I didn't want to be like that. Be times do equals have. This idea of who we're being. What do I want to learn? What do I need to unlearn? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? But that list of 20 is your keep doing, because you're rocking it. And we got to remember that stuff. So remember, the environments that we create for ourselves and others shapes our mindsets, our beliefs, our behaviors, and results. And in our heads is an environment. And the things we say to each other or the things we surround ourselves with. So there's 3 words that like I look at when I sit in front of my camera. Like 3 mini phrases. I ordered online. It says be silly, be honest, and be kind. And those are sort of my 3 things this year that I wanted to move forward. How did I be silly sometimes? How did I be honest, making sure people got the kind truth? And how did I be kind? Not nice, kind. So if I'm going to be honest, I want to do it in a way that it's helpful, not hurtful, and that it helps move you forward. Because here's one thing I know to be true in the work that I've done in our high performance coaching space is many of our coaches, and I'm guessing many of you are feeling that, coaches and sport leaders, burnt out. Oh my God, I'm exhausted from all this change. That's normal. And so building a to-be list and starting to actually put some habits and practices around being more is actually shifting the environment that you're putting around yourself that's saying, you know what, it has been a bit of a crappy year, or it's been an awful lot of pressure to perform in places I've never been before. How do I create safety for myself? Well, I can start to control what I can control. One of the most important things that we can remember is that we can actually control our mood. We can shift our thoughts. And we can actually decide what's okay and where we're headed. There's an exercise that I'm going to show you that I do that lives in the to-be space sometimes, where it goes kind of like this. So let's say I have 3 words. I'm just going to make them up. What if one was calm, one was curious, and maybe I wanted to feel more adventurous. My word was adventure. And I can kind of stretch that creativity. So if those are my words, then an exercise 2 around this to-be list is sort of like, what are all the things that I do today that I'm going to continue? Make this smaller. Continue. So where are the places and spaces I am pretty good at being calm? Where am I curious? And where do I have adventures? And those can be big or small. What are the things, though, that maybe I want to put in this circle that I want to stop doing? So you're seeing how I'm shrinking the circle. And then I want you to think about what would be 3 things that you could do for each one of these words. What would I start doing? What would I stop doing? What would I continue doing? Okay, I'm getting some stuff in the chat. All right, Dean, you're saying performance data presented the other day as a whole, we don't seem to lift or move our swimmers' performance forward later in the season.
Yeah, and I'm a poor chat writer.
Totally okay. So
and
talk to me more. Give me the more
yeah,
context because I think this is cool.
So it's just, I find it interesting because data shows that on the whole Canadian swimming, they don't really move forward when they should move forward. Like, we're really good. I would suggest that the energy and the excitement and everything is pretty high right now. Obviously, still a lot of nervousness, curiousness, and not, so maybe some doubt, but because of the circumstance. But lots of energy early on, and we look at the swimmers, and they seem to move along, and they sort of peak at a point that's good to see. However, their next lift, when they should by next summer. And I'm thinking, okay, is it because they're tired, or they've done the same, they ran out of gas? But is it also part of the coach, part of the leaders, and about understanding how to readjust your energy? Because I think we go, and we're exhausted. We're like I'm thinking about my staff right now. I mean, good gosh, it's not even October yet, and I know they're exhausted. They're floored. Even though they're excited, I think they're excited, most, from what I understand. But so I think we take it into the swimming game. So it's interesting. How do you, yeah.
So I think you're kind of on, like, whether it's a direct correlation or causation, I think there's a few things we need to understand about human to human dynamic. First of all, we have these things called mirror neurons. In other words, our moods are contagious. So when my mood is like the weather. So if I bring low energy in and I don't have the same energy that I started the season with, it actually can permeate in through the environment that I'm coaching in. There's no doubt about it. So if we're not, as the coaches and leaders, working hard to kind of, shore up, not cope, but actually replenish. So this being list for me was always my measure, my monitor, my gauge around what was my refueling of my gas tank going to look like. Because when my tank's full, I'm more confident. So are you. And so when I pick words that are actually energizing and I find ways around what am I going to start doing to bring more of that? What am I going to stop doing that gets in the way? And what can I keep doing? Because here's the other thing I was going to say around this idea of performance data is when we focus on the goal only and what we're doing technically and tactically, and we miss the relational dynamic in the program, sometimes I think our swimmers are getting exhausted because nobody's actually, I don't know how much feedback we're getting that's positive, that's encouraging, or that we're pausing to go look at the progress we're making. If you go back to the list, right? What are the progress? So if the data says this, what's it telling you? And how do we use the data to actually have a conversation that says, all right, here's where we're at. We went here. Now we seem to have plateaued. So let's talk about who do you need to be or what do you need to do to go up a little bit and do it like a step. Does that make sense? Like, I think this idea of taking our performance data and drawing it this way and actually having a do and a be list kind of idea around here for ourselves, but also for our athletes versus just a straight do, the mileage in the pool. So our energy absolutely as leaders permeates. And the safer it feels and the more trust and the more we balance the person and their performance. So relationships and results. And we take care of them. This is where I wonder whether you start to see people actually tapping into their potential at a deeper level or pushing through the pain or pushing beyond their own limiting beliefs, because we as the coaches have done that for ourselves and are doing that with them. So some of this stuff, that is some of the conversation that, some of what I'm sharing too is stuff that I've taken into some of our team environments. They're like, who do we need to be this season? If these are the words, what does that look like, sound like, feel like? And when we stay in busy and just doing, we miss the opportunity to kind of practice these kind of shifting our energy thing. Our performance goes up when our gas tank is full, just like my car. Like I always look at the B list as this idea of who do I want to be. So if my tank is full of some kind of energy I'm choosing that I think is of value, just like my car, then I have the gas in the tank to go the distance. So when there's a setback, a detour, some construction on the road, I'm not freaking out because it's like, oh, I got a full tank of gas. But I know for me, as soon as the gas light goes on, so when I'm feeling not so good and, people show up and they got a problem or something isn't happening or there's behavior I don't like, I don't have time for this. I'm too busy. And we miss the opportunity to go with those we lead to go, okay, what do you need? But we're usually in a panic to get over and around this because we don't have a lot of energy in the tank. And so the more we focus on filling our own tanks and the more energy we bring into the workplaces and the pool and the programs that we lead, it is contagious. It becomes part of the culture. The way we do things around here. So, who do you want to be? So when you look at that long list of accomplishments, you look at what you're learning and you have 3 qualities you want to be. What are some three things you want to do around that? Like I kind of drew my circle. What do I need to do to make that way of being more reality? And what do I think I will have as a result of doing that? Will I have more fun? Will I see more success? Will I retain more swimmers? Will I start to see the kids having fun? Will I start to see my coaches actually speaking up in meetings or my staff? Because I sort of look at this kind of building awareness and starting to define how we want to be and what we want to do. Asking questions first of ourselves and getting clear on who do I want to be, what do I want to do, and what kind of a season I want to have. And I've defined it in such terms that are so behavioral. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What will people hear me say? What will they not hear me say? What will I hear the kids say because my energy is so good? What will I hear my coaches say? Because learning happens in a loop. Thoughts create my reality. Change my thoughts, change my reality. If I shift my mindset around how I want to be, and I give myself permission to practice, even if I made it a game. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I'm more this, and Tuesday, Thursdays, I get to go back to normal. What happens? I used to do that. How do I do that? So when we look back and we look back in our learning and we start to kind of take a look at where we're going, we start to actually realize that everything we do is we act, okay? Everything I say or do, I've taken an action. And then I experience that action. In other words, did that feel good or not good? Right? So I might say, today we're going to do this. And everyone goes, ah. And I said, come on, it's going to be really great. And I said, I promise, trust me. And then we finish it and I go, well, how was that? On a scale of 1 to 10, what was it for you? What was it for you? What was it for you? And if I realize it wasn't great, I go, okay, there, I've got my learning. And then I get to choose whether I do that drill, say that thing, do what I did or not. But if we're not testing and experimenting and kind of go, here's what I'm going to do. Here's why I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to watch what happens. And that's when we start to build the learning. We go from kind of, I don't know what I don't know, to starting to build in a level of awareness, because there's 4 levels of learning. My simple language of it is, I don't know what I don't know. I know what I don't know. I know what I know. And then I don't even know there's this idea of mastery or unconscious competence, where I'm so good at it that I don't even know I'm good at it. And the place we want to hang out in the to be or building our personal plan and elevating our game individually and collectively is really that place and space of trying to surface, what do I not know that I don't know? And the stuff that I do know that I don't know how to do, what do I want to do to learn that? It doesn't have to be big, it can be small.
Judy,
Yeah.
when I look at reflection, I see your loop, and loop. How what's the duration of the loop in a sense, or is it repeated, or is there a moment where it needs to shift a little bit in order to you know up the game or whatever? But on the reflection piece, is that around recharging, and is there a real skill? Is there some skills around that that's pretty important? Because you mentioned the three points of gratitude, making three simple tools of sorts.
Yeah.
But around reflection, to me, reflection is an important piece, and
Yep.
And then it helps with self-awareness actually, and helps with a lot of things, but also around recharging. I think I guess that's maybe, if I had to think of something, and I'm just digressing because I'm trying to create a conversation here because you're but the thing I've noticed that throughout this pandemic, even though one day leads into the other, and one day before you know it, our experience was we used to have staff call every day virtually, like in the beginning of the pandemic, and you barely just get rolling and go, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock, we had that. And then we moved it down to 2 days a week, and then we moved down 1 day a week, but the time is just flowing. But is there a method or somewhat of a consideration around really recharging? I just find that that's important, because I think if anything we've learned watching things, at least performance-wise, from our Olympians and Paralympians, that they've come through under harsh conditions and still were able to manage performance. But one of the things that was said was they weren't competing as much, but they were in a more ideal or more focused focused competitive moment, or a placed moment. I don't know if I'm just rambling, trying to hopefully
Okay.
somebody else. So I want
Yeah,
somebody to get on there.
I think there's a couple. I think there's a couple layers to your thing around reflection. So if I think about individually, right? So I mean, here I know the power of reflection. That's when learning happens. So I get up every morning, and I have like my ideal routine every day around, I call it my power hour. It's like my thing where I look at my day, I visualize it, I set 3 intentions around what would make today great. I write it down. I pick one word of my little list of words. So I have like my word move, I have all these different synonyms. But if you had your 3 to be list, I would say my intention today is be more X. And then I go about my day, and before I go to bed at night, I sit back and go, what am I grateful for today? What were 3 amazing things that happened today? And what's one thing I want to do better tomorrow? I don't judge, it's just one thing I can do better tomorrow. So that muscle of reflection is actually a muscle of curiosity and learning. And so when we know how to do it ourselves, so then you put it in the coaching context. So you start with, here's the intention of our practice today. We're going to focus on this. Here's why we're focusing on it. And here's where we're going. And then you start to do the reflection and build that muscle with each of our athletes. So what'd you notice? What worked? What was hard? And you start with their reflection. What are they seeing and knowing? And then we get to add our wisdom. Well, here's what I would agree with you. I saw that. I saw that too. Here's one thing I didn't see. So this would be the one thing I want you to pay attention to in this next set. So from a coaching standpoint, we can create learning by actually helping the kids reflect on their own. What am I seeing? What am I feeling? What am I noticing about my own performance? I might even have stats that I can show them. When you look at this, what comes up for you? What are you thinking? What questions are you asking yourself? What do you think you need to do to shift these move forward? Organizationally, if I run a club, I got to bet every year, every club has got some kind of a plan for the club. Here are 3 things we're going to do. Okay, so here's our intention. Then we're going to do a bunch of activities. But the curious thing becomes, if we're not asking people how are we doing, or we're not pausing to go, are we having the impact or the influence that we wanted? What are we learning? What problems do we need to solve? So organization, I think about what's happening across the country right now post Tokyo. And some of the conversation I have the privilege in facilitating is the debrief. What can we learn from Tokyo that we want to take forward into this next quad? What can we learn that are problems we absolutely need to solve because they got in the way of performance? So this loop can happen at an individual, it can happen at a team or program, it can happen at a organizational level. But if we're not reflecting, we're not learning, and if we're not learning, we're not leading. We're not getting better.
Okay, Judy, just on that, when you just talked
Yeah.
about the debriefing process, what tools do you use when trying to facilitate or try and bring out some of those moments? Like you said, it's easy to pick apart the negative side of things or what didn't work and try. The hardest question,
Yeah.
I made a comment with Steve Norris. We had Steve Norris earlier today, and I said one of the things that he helped me with is, answer the question of why did they swim well? This is way back in the day, and it's a hard question to answer. It really is, because it's the other one's easy. But what about debriefing techniques or anything like that? I know I'm taking a little bit offside here, but I
think it's a learning loop, right? So it's like I can become a better coach, I can become a better person, I can become a better leader if I appreciate how our brains learn. Just like we know people get stronger faster or bulk up because what we do is exercise or do training that is repetitive of the same thing to actually make sure that it becomes hardwired in. I don't have to think about it any longer. My muscles grow the more weight, right? But so the reflection piece, or what do I do so there's some real simple skills that I say to people. First of all, get rid of why. Get rid of the question why. Why tends to, if you're a Simon Sinek fan and start with why, I love that, but at the same time, why, when it's relational and a reflective piece, it actually usually is said or spoken from a place of comparison, criticism, or judgment. So if you can manage your tone and you can actually ask your why in a balanced way, then go for it. But I always say, start with what, how, questions. What are you learning here? What did you notice? What worked? What didn't work? What would have made this better? Or how do we want to make it better? What problem do we really need to solve in order to make you faster, stronger, or to change the culture, or to get people to... But when we really get clear on what problem we're trying to solve, or what is it we really want to learn? What are we learning here? Those become really, really important reflections, learning spaces for us individually as coaches and leaders, but also more broadly in terms of how we show up. So reflection starts with what and how. What is working? What isn't working? And then you go, what isn't working one by one, and go, okay, within that, what is working? What's the real problem we need to solve? Does that help, Dean?
The trouble with things like this, when you sit in all these things, your brain starts really working overtime, and it's right at the wrong time to be working overtime on ideas. Yeah. And almost, I had a thought there that you almost need to start a season with the way you want to see the season end, and have that conversation and question first. Like time warp it forward and say, what kind of conversation would be the type of conversation you'd like to have at the end, and then go towards the stepping up piece. Maybe, I don't know. It's as you said, mindset. How to set the mind is a bit of an interesting thing, because as when I see this emerge better, the whole thing is that we have an opportunity. We've mentioned it several times about there is an opportunity here to see things be better or improve on with change or with progress or whatever we want to call it. And I just want to find out I sort of want to have the
so this reflection thing and emerging better, you said the words here, and I go back to my simple formula. What do I want to have at the end of the season? What do I want to have at the end of the year? What's my outcome? And so that I might define it as my vision. I might define it as my goal. I might define it as just a state of being or a desire I have. Or I might say it's the end state. And so what you said it there is great. If I don't know where I'm going, everywhere nowhere will, like I won't get there if I don't know where I'm going, right? But if I'm really intentional around what do I want to have? When you think about reimagining swimming in Ontario, when it's 2030, what does it look like? And if that picture's so clear and it almost takes your breath away, then you know you've got yourself a pretty good kind of end state. It's like me saying, I said, I'm going to move 365 days a year, a minimum 30 minutes a day. And I went, whew, that's going to be hard. I've never done that before. I'm like, okay, so what am I going to need to do? So if I know what that looks like, because I know that the small things I do will make my health better. So what do I need to do? So I had to back it up. Well, these are the activities. And then the other piece becomes, this is the mindset or the qualities I want to bring to it. And then the reflection becomes at the end of every day or at the end of the week, how did I do? Am I moving closer to this? What are the things I did do? And how did I show up? And when I put the two together, is my goal or my end state still exciting and interesting, or am I becoming exhausted by it? So start with the end in mind. And then start, rather than just quickly going straight to action, start first to go, how do I need to be? What are the qualities or of the way I show up that's going to be really important energy to help us get from A to B? And then the doing starts to come really clear. We're creatures of habits. And so anytime we especially, and I think in my keynote, I was saying we experience change like pain. And so when we make it simple, repetitive, and rewarding, whether at a big level for the organization or at a small level, for me every day, what's my reward? Well, there's kind of this really cool reward that's happening as you know, here we are in September. Every day I have this little color-coded thing around, oh my God, look how many days I've moved. And I have a few that are better than nothing, so it's not necessarily 30 days, but rather than 0, I had this better than nothing, and that was like my get out of jail free card. How are we being? What are we doing to get where we want to go? From a leadership standpoint, if I want to be a great coach, who do I need to be? What do I need to do? So if I need to be more curious, then what do I need to do? I need to ask more questions.
So Judy,
Yeah.
the idea of the clarity of outcome. So is it fair to say that if an outcome doesn't come with a clear sense to it, that it's not really worth spending energy on?
I think it depends on what you define as clear or not clear. Sometimes my outcomes are that I have a desire to make an impact on the world. And here's how I want to do that. And here's what my measures are. Like, it's not going to be anything that, you know, I'm not going to win an Olympic medal, and I'm probably not going to be blah, blah, blah. But I sometimes think about, what do I want to have at the end of a session? Some positive feedback, some pretty good questions, people who follow up and say, I have a thought afterwards. That's what becomes, you know, for me, that's what I want to have. I want to have something that tells me that I showed up kind of believing in what I do. Then hopefully I deliver a program in the space that I work at that was meaningful and mattered to people, and they learned something. Because the reality is, you know, our growth is not a straight line. I think it's this iterative thing that we just keep, hopefully, kind of moving up bigger and bigger. I should maybe have drawn it this way. How do we use our growth as something like this? And the loops are just the iterative new skills, new things we're learning. And over time, right? Over time, and with some practice and intention, these become spaces where I just get a little bit better, or my brain is smarter. So my head and my heart. But that's how I look at this kind of learning thing. Over time, if I'm intentional and I'm always creating spaces to build new habits through systems, habits are systems. I've got an intention, how do I want to be? Here's what I'm going to do. And then the reflection or the practice place is the system and the structure I've put around myself. So as you see, my morning starts with an intention and I have a very clear routine. This is my power hour. These are the things I want to do in that hour that fire me up for my day. And then for me to go to sleep, it's like, so how was today? Did I do what I said I was going to do? And what did I learn? What was amazing? And what's one thing that I want to do better tomorrow? And then I do the same process again the next day. And we can do that in a team. So the work I do with large teams, we do that. Where do you want to be at the end of the year? And what are the checkpoints we're going to decide we're going to be? So who do we need to be? What do we need to do to get there? And we look at the mindset, that's the being. We look at the skill, that's the doing. And we look at the system or structure that's going to help us get to that end state. And if we're not making the progress we want to do, at least if we're reflecting often, we can go, oh, okay, what are we learning here? What assumptions did we make that maybe was like, this is harder than I thought it would? It is a discipline. But I think sometimes we make our goals or our outcomes all or nothings. And I say, what if it was a journey to get, how far can we get? Make it lofty, and then every go, how far did I get on this expedition of change that I'm leading? So when you think about kind of, the handout, it was like, what's good? So where am I now? Where do I want to go next? So the middle of the handout really looks at, okay, what's my vision for the next this season or the next 360 days? How do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? And sometimes I go, okay, what's the one word or the three words that will define that for you, or that will kind of summarize it? So that's kind of how, knowing where you want to go. And then the next part is choosing, making a choice and acting. And that's the part we tend to go, here's where I am, here's where I want to go. But we forget kind of that choosing to do things differently or new is difficult for most of us. And so you'll see on the thing is, okay, so if I'm going to 365 days or whenever I say my end point is, what is it I will do? I'm often reminded in this actions post, everyone's like, well, I'll try, and maybe I can do this. And so this is actually one of my favorite quotes. Do or do not. There is no try. If we want to be a Jedi Master, if we want to be excellent, if we want to be something different, better than we were yesterday, it's the actions we take and the efforts we put into it on a repeated basis that we start to hardwire our brains, change our behaviors, and this is how we actually learn ourselves. It's how we create learning in those that we coach, and it's how we create learning in our organizations so that they can actually continue to evolve and meet the needs of those around us. So when we make, all this stuff happen, or hope's not a great strategy. When we pull it back in is, what can I do? What will I do? What did I do? Choose and act. It's the action that creates the traction. Small, simple things every day.
There you go, Stewie. There's another t-shirt.
I like that one.
Yep.
Behavior change. I don't, when you think about, for me to change my behavior or anybody else's behavior, it has to feel incredibly safe and positive. Because I do what I do because I've practiced it that way when I want to change a behavior. So I'll give you a really personal example. When I got all that feedback that my nickname by my staff was Dick, otherwise known as Dictator, and when I sat down, when they go, so who's Dick? Like, what does she say? What does she do? And when does she show up? And my team was like, how do you not know? I go, I don't. I've never seen her. So then they started to unpack. I said, so when does she show up? And they were like, okay, well, after this meeting with the senior leadership team is not a good time to be the first person that you see. And here's what you seem to be in a rush, and there's a whole bunch of information that you start going, we need to do this, 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 and this. I was like, oh, okay, really? Or when we come to you with a problem, you start lecturing us. When really we want to pick your brain, but you're just telling us what to do because you just don't. And most of the time they were like, and most of the time you're telling us off the side as you're still working on your computer. I was like, oh God, that's terrible. I don't really do that, do it? Yeah, but if you come in and you've had a good day, like they're like, don't get us wrong, Judy. There's days that's like super fun and you got big ideas and you want to take things here, but when you get stressed, it's like military like. Is this done yet? Is this done yet? Why isn't this done? And it's like there's never any celebration of what we do get done. And so these were all the things that they were telling me. And so to break it down into my habits, I was like, okay, I listened. I went back to them. I said, here's 3 things I'm going to do. When you come to me with a problem, I said, I'm calling it the game of 3. I'm going to ask you 3 questions to make sure I really understand it. And then before I open my mouth and offer my advice and wisdom and experience, I'm going to say, what do you need from me right now? Because what they were telling me was sometimes they wanted my advice. Sometimes they wanted me to take it on. Sometimes they just wanted to think out loud and make sure they were heading in the right direction. And other times they just wanted me to actually validate how great their work was. And so when I got in the habit of playing the game of 3, it was amazing how all of a sudden I had less to do. My team was happier. And what I learned 9 times out of 10 when they came to talk to me, the more I asked questions to go, okay, tell me, what do you think about that? And what's your approach? And how'd you get to that? Okay. And I'd ask a few more. And did you talk, have you talked to this person? And yeah. Then I'd say, okay, what do you need from me right now to move forward? And they always would tell me. The other thing I did, I was told that I was more critical than I was positive. So I created this system where I would put, as you can see, I like to wear bracelets. I had 10 elastics on this wrist and they had to be on this wrist by the end of the day. And my job was to actually find 10 good things every day to be able to, genuine, not good job, like actually going, thank you, Jed, for doing this. Oh, I love when you say that. Or thank you very much for doing this. I had to find 10 things that were working every day and verbalize it. That's what got me to put elastic on the other wrist. It took me 6 months and 3 days before I had all 10 elastics on this wrist. That's how long it took me to actually find 10 good things in the day to be able to notice and name. One of my favorite people in the world that I did my executive coaching program with is Debbie Muir, who worked, obviously, as you know, with Mark Tewksbury. She led our synchro teams, or our artistic swimming teams in Canada, to some great accomplishments. And she also worked with Mark. And she and I met, and she was telling me about some of the things she learned in that space too. We were swapping some stories, and she was saying that was one thing that her coaching changed forever when she over-focused on what was working, or at least made sure the ratio was more positive than it was negative. I always say 3-to-1. For me, the game is 3-to-1. What are 3 good things I can think about you and 1 thing I need you to work on? So when we talk about kind of breaking it down into simple steps or habits, we got to build the routines or create the systems that help us make this intention of ours visible, meaningful, and that we crave it. It's why James Clear talks about habit stacking. It's why my whole power hour in the morning is all tied to the reward of my coffee at the end of it. So I have everything set up that I do what I do, my reflections, my exercise, or my reading. And then, when that's all done, the reward is my coffee. I'm good to go. Some people tie, it to sticky notes as they brush their teeth as their intention for the day. If you have a list of things you want to do, take a picture of it, find an image, and stick it on your phone. So, Krista, I'm just going to read your note here because I realized you sent it a few minutes ago and I was yattering on and on. Okay. So if I understand you correctly, it's this: we're trying to do all this stuff and then we're hit with the anxiety or the resistance or wanting to go back to normal. Is that the first one? How do we manage our own? Okay. So in my work with people around emotions, anxiety as an emotion is the emotion. The gift of anxiety is clarity. Its message to me is I have too much or not enough information. And so here I go back to my game of 3. When I'm feeling particularly worried, upset, uncertain, whatever, I ask myself 3 questions. What do I know? What do I not know? What do I need to know, or who can help me know something so I can move forward? Because when we're in the grips of that, we get immobilized. Oh, well, I can't do anything. But I think when we say, what can I do? Right? Like I can unpack my worry through what do I know, what do I not know? What can I do? What can't I do? And then when I think of the things I can't do, I can go, all right, is there anything in there that I need more information on, or can somebody help me? But the more we are in our distress, the more reactive we are, and we can't actually be our best. There's a framework, actually. Maybe you've seen this before. This idea of above and below the line thinking. So when I'm feeling anger, anxiety, fear, sadness, or shame, my distressing emotions, I'm more likely to be thinking below the line. The line is like a choice. And it's natural and normal. Our brains are naturally and normally more focused on, remember, I'm trying to decide threat or not, safe or not safe. And so when things don't feel safe, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, I'm anxious, I'm whatever, things aren't going my way, then our thinking tends to dip below the line versus above the line. And the way I teach this to a lot of coaches is above the line, I have an or. And this is where the game of 3 always helped me because I'm a warrior. So the or helps me move forward. And when I'm above the line, my thinking is more optimistic and open. The A stands for I'm looking for what action I can take, because even small steps forward is progress, and progress actually makes me feel like I have some control and certainty. And the more I'm moving forward small steps, that just makes me feel better. And R is what are the relationships and results I want. So it can be as simple as, well, what can I do? Okay, I can't do this but what can I do? And who can I do that with? And so how do I focus on what I can and what I can do? Because this is where, like above the line, love and joy live. My confidence, my curiosity, my connection, my warmth, whatever. Below the line, I'm in bed. This is how I remember. And when I'm in bed, what I'm going to hear or myself say or others say is blame, excuses, dressed up as really good reasons. I'm busy, I'm tired, my dog ate my breakfast, I spilt my coffee. And the last one is I'm defensive. So the goal here is not to be always above the line, because that would be toxic positivity and that would be so not human. And people go, really? When do you have a bad day? Like, that's just not okay. The awareness that that I'm trying to build with this is this idea of when I notice myself below the line, that's the place and space where I'm super anxious. What can I do? Who can help me? What questions can I ask? What do I know? What do I not know? The act of asking questions, if you think about my brain when I flip my lid, and I'm below the line, when I ask myself questions, what can I do? What am I learning here? What choices do I have? I'm actually putting the part of my brain back down that helps me think it through. And so the more I rush and the more I multitask, the longer I stay below the line. This is the other thing. Our brains can't actually, this part of my brain that does my best thinking, it actually can't hold more than 3 things at once. The more I multitask, the dumber I am too. Science shows that. So our emotions drive the bus. Right? And so I always sort of go, when I'm lying in bed and I'm feeling sorry for myself and I'm blaming COVID and I'm blaming whoever and I'm giving excuses, I'm too tired, it's too hard. Or when people go, honestly, Judy, you're being a bit of a victim, and I get really defensive, then I know I'm in the grips of my more distressing emotion and I'm super below the line. I'm polishing my problems so they are so bright. And so I'm not being any of those things that I said I wanted to be. I'm not moving forward. But if I shift, because this is the thing, we're not our thoughts. We can actually shift our thoughts by actually getting curious. What am I thinking? Yeah, more people spend a lot of time below the line. And I don't want to judge that because we all go there multiple times a day. It's how long we stay there that is an indicator of our emotional intelligence and our resiliency. There's a great little video by the Conscious Leadership Group that I'll stick in the chat that I share it all the time with here it is. I'll put it in the chat, but it's a great illustration, and I use it with kids. I use it with I've used it in all my Canada Coach program, but it's a great little video if you want to kind of pull it up for later to watch. It just gives a really simple illustration of kind of how our brain works and how above and below the line thinking works. And if you think about, if I want to be better, B times do equals have, and I find myself actually more anxious than not, then what I need to do is, how do I be more curious? How do I be more calm? How do I be? And so what would be my habits and practice? How do I slow myself down? What are the moments in my day where I pause and check in and go, where am I? Because our emotions inform our thoughts, which inform our behaviors. And so when we are really anxious, so sometimes with the kids that when we teach the brain and feelings and thoughts, same with coaches. Like when we get frustrated with kids, when we start giving feedback from below the line, it's coming from a place of criticism, judgment, and a need for control. But if I shift my own thinking above the line, then I'm actually going to give you feedback that is focused on appreciative. I'm actually going to show you what you are doing and what you're not doing, or at least helping you see where your progress is relative to the standard or assessment, because I'm going to be able to find words where I say, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing, here's what I'm noticing, here's what the stat says, here's what, if we watch this video, here's what it means. But below the line, when I'm below the line, my feedback will start with, you didn't, you are, and we tend to label, blame, shame, or guilt, or embarrass people. Because when we are below the line, our ability to choose our words is actually compromised. It's why when we are irritated, frustrated, annoyed, it's why we tell parents, I don't know, in the sports my kids play, there's the 24-hour rule before you give a complaint. I'm guessing there's something, right? It's like, let's just let the emotions calm down. We, as leaders and coaches, have to learn how to do that too. How do I want to be in those moments? So if I want to be more calm, because I know I flip my lid and lose my cool in those difficult, challenging situations, okay, so how am I going to start practice? How am I going to end practice? What are the things I'm going to say when, so we have to dress rehearse and practice the stuff the way we want to be. Because our habits are hardwired in. We are designed to keep doing what we've always done. My favorite quote is this. Oops, wrong button. Every action that I take is a vote for the type of person I wish to become. Right? Because really, if I embrace this idea of who do I need to be, what do I need to do, and I work my way through the plan, like even the simple act, this is what's always fascinating to me. My silly one pager, people look at it and go, oh God, I don't know what to do. But if they kind of go, how do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? What word does that kind of is my inspiration word for the year? Maybe there's synonyms I want to kind of do and do something about that around me. Maybe I want to do it as a team. Okay, so if we did all these things, what does a year from now or the end of season look like? That's a great conversation to have with our athletes too. What will you learn personally, and how will you, in our case, I said professional growth, but what will you learn, technically, or what will you accomplish by being more this and doing more this? And then the big dig deep is, why does this matter? Because if you don't have a bigger why around why you want to become better, then there's nothing driving that forward for you. So here's where I am now. Where do I want to go next? And then the how to move forward is really starting to go, okay, well, what would be the daily habits that I want to start or stop doing? Mostly start. I always say start with, what am I going to start? What might be some weekly or monthly things I want to start doing or keep doing that'll reinforce it? And how will I know? Those are the measures of success. Because if I'm going to grow and I'm going to change and I'm going to reimagine myself so that I can reimagine and lead the change that I want in my program, in my pool, in Ontario, swimming overall, I have to start at the start, and I got to look in the mirror. Where am I? Where am I winning? What were the things that I'm not so good at? How do I want to be known? What do I need to do? Where do I want to get to? We got to start shortening. There's a lot of businesses I work with that I say, think of every 12 weeks as a year. Shorten them, so that you go, okay, between here and 12 weeks from now, what am I going to get done? What are the 3 most important things we're going to do? Even as a coach, we can actually look at, I do that even with the individuals I coach from a leadership standpoint. I'm like, where do you want to be three months from now? And what's the most important thing that 3 months from now you want to be able to say, done? Could be something on your to-do list, or could be something on your to-be list. And then we backcast it. So what are the things we're going to talk about, focus on, and practice in our weekly conversations? Power of 3. Yep. Because our brains are binary. We love either or. Yes, no. You, me. When I split the difference, I believe the 3 most important. So here's speaking of the power of 3. Here are 3 3-letter words that you need to listen for and add into your language. Yet, now. Oh, sorry, the third one has 4 letters. Is will. The other word could be can. Can and will kind of are buddies. They hang out together. It's like Ernie and Bert. What can you do? And then what will you do? But here's the thing is, when people go, I can't do that, then, or I say to myself, I can't do that, add yet. What do I want to do now? Start. What do you want to do now? And when I notice I'm in a state of feeling irritated, tired, or annoyed, I'll go, what do I need now in this moment? I might need a walk. I might need a break from the screen. But I can then use that, how do I want to be in this moment? If I notice I'm not being how I want to be, then I say, what do I need now? And I give it to myself as best I can, or give it to myself later so I can refuel the tank, so I can go back out and do what I need to do. Emotional regulation is actually the birthplace of great change leaders and emotionally intelligent leaders and coaches. And most of us actually don't have very good emotional language. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, I think the work of Mark Brackett is unbelievable. He wrote a book called Permission to Feel. And he has this really great app that I get a lot of actually sport coaches to use and just play with for themselves. Like so many of our athletes will have mentor performance folks that they can work with. But Mark Brackett's research and work out of Yale University Center for Emotional Intelligence, there's an app called the Mood Meter. And you set it up where you can actually give yourself reminders twice a day. And so it's actually a great journal because it's like there's different zones, pleasant and unpleasant, high energy, low energy. And then you in that zone, there's multiple feeling words. So you start going, no, I don't feel that. I'm going to keep moving around. But you start to log your feelings. And on particularly bad days, we tend to then paint everything that's happened before us with fairly negative things. But if I can go, actually, the data would tell me over the last 30 days, I've actually had 2/3 of those days were pretty good. So you rate how you're feeling, you name what you're feeling, you have the opportunity if you want to journal it. And I always say to people, play the game of 3, but add a 0 to it. So 30 days, what would be a 30-day challenge of tracking your mood? Beginning of day, end of day. What would you learn? The education with young people around emotional literacy and emotional agility is super fun, was when we talk about feelings as data and messengers. And if you've never seen Inside Out that Pixar did, it was actually Pixar working with the Greater Good Science Center out of UC Berkeley, California. And that was their way of trying to bring neuroscience and what we knew about emotions and how it plays into our resiliency, our confidence, our ability to learn, our ability to grow. And so, I mean, if you haven't seen it, well, it's worth seeing. But that's actually going on in your brain, just like it was in this little girl's brain in the movie. But it's all science-based. I mean, they obviously wrapped it in a really great story. But there's an unbelievable scene with the elephant and Sadness sitting on an edge. And it's so great. He's so sad. He's lost his wagon. I forget he called it something else. And Joy's like trying to cheer him up. Don't worry about it. It's all really good. Da, 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 da. And then Sadness sits down beside this elephant and says, you really miss her. That really mattered to you. It's the most beautiful example of empathy. I use it all the time. Because so often we want to take feelings away, dismiss, minimize them because they feel uncomfortable. But they actually make it bigger. So if I'm going to be and do and have the season I want, be the leader I want to be, part of it is I have to start myself. Who do I want to be? How am I being right now? Where am I winning the game? And maybe where I'm struggling, not losing, I'm struggling. Because I think this year, I think there's days where I'm like, man, I'm just holding on. But I get up every day and trying to go fill my tank enough so that I am hoping to be one place every day for the people I get to work with, helping them move their space forward. And in doing that, I get to go with them. And that's fulfilling for me. And I think about the sport of swimming. There's so much movement forward. How do I use the analogy and the metaphor of swimming for myself? Where am I going to dip my toe in? Where am I going to do a few lengths in my learning? And where am I going to go deep dive? To be better, to do better, and to have better. There's so much out there now that we can consume simply in our drives to work and back. Podcasts, books to read, and there's lots out there. I just have a goal right now where I go through quite a few books every year, but I just try and read 15 minutes every morning. It's part of my power hour, 15 minutes. I set a timer. I have a timer for 10 minutes to journal. I have a timer for, I don't think there's ever too much, Dean. It becomes too much when there's no reflection and there's no integration. So when I read a new book, I'm like, what's one idea from this book I want to integrate into my work with clients? That's how I see my value add. What am I learning and how do I share my learning? Because if I can learn something and teach you about it and get a response or reaction, or it helps you move something forward, then that book was worth it. And I've actually integrated that learning into my understanding. of conflict, of leadership, of teaming, of high performance, of mental resiliency, of emotional intelligence, whatever I'm reading. Social emotional development of kids, relational connection. I'm a nerd, if you haven't figured that out, but I do it 15 minutes a time every day. Yeah, disciplined integration. Small things often, done repeatedly, much like when I think about the number of lakes I swam as a kid trying to get better. It's like we learn in small gains, and we learn in positive environments, and the environment that we can create for ourselves around who do I want to be? What's my 2.0? What am I needing to do? Start and continue, and maybe stop. Who's going to help me? It was super fascinating when I was working 2 years ago. I just finished up the work, but over the last 3 years, I've worked really closely with our women's hockey team. And one of the things we did is we went through this whole exercise of what's on my to-be list and what do I need to do and how do I need to show up to be able to move this team forward. Not just on the ice, but everywhere. But then I said to them, who's your kind perspective crew? And they're like, what the heck is that? I go, who are 5 people in your life that if you were to share this with them and say, I need you to watch for this, they would be the kindest people to go, you know what, I saw that today, Judy. Thank you. So in my dictator reformation game plan, my team became my kind perspective crew. And every month I said, okay, how I'm doing? Give me a score. We called it the dictator meter. And every month it was always like, how was I doing? And then every quarter, every 3 months, I sat down with each person. What's one thing I need to start doing that would make me a better leader for you? What's one thing I need to stop doing that would make me a better leader for you? And what are 3 things that you want me to keep doing that just work? And in the beginning, I didn't get a lot of stop and start, but I did get a couple of keeps, which was good. It was promising for me. But I did that religiously until so that I didn't have any more surprises. I wanted to know where I stood, and I also wanted my team to know that I cared deeply about their progress and their performance. Did it take a lot of time? No. It was like, okay, this week I just had it scheduled. This week is stop, start, continue week. And the last meeting of every month with my team was it was always the dictator meter, and we had this measure. When we create measures that matter, because the purpose we've made meaningful, and we've chosen that we'd rather live from a place of our best, better every single try, not our busy, brutally unkind, starving ourselves. Then who we're being multiplied by what we're doing, we start to create and have a velocity around achieving what we want to achieve or the impact we want to have. It starts to happen. But in the beginning, we got to kind of get over ourselves and realize that the learning and the process is more important than the outcome. So for those of you who stood and hung around tonight, I hope there was some value you got here. And if you would be so kind, rather, I appreciate some of the feedback. I've been, some of the notes, but I would love to know what's one thing that you're leaving with tonight that's new or different that you're willing to kind of go, I wonder if I'm going to do this. Like, what was the value? One thing that was of value most in the conversation. So if you want to turn your camera on because we're small, I would love it. If you want to put it in the chat, but what was one thing that was of most value?
I think for me, it was the or bed line that sort of really resonated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Brian, what were you thinking? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stu.
I just like the idea of that notice and name concept too.
Yeah. Christy, both. Brian, what was it for you? Oh, I can't hear you. Your sound's not on. Darn. No, your sound's not coming through. I'm bummed. Will you
Type
type
it
it
into
for
the
me?
chat.
Thanks, Brian. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to hear your voice, but I'm really grateful that you've actually been part of the journey with me a little bit this week. I have seen you. Logan, Riege, anything you would be willing to share? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Reflect to connect the dots. Action creates traction. Commit and go. Choose and act. And the most important thing is if you want to be better, define what being better really looks like. Create a picture that you go, yeah, that's exactly how. When people say, what was it like working with me? Hopefully those are some of the, whatever words you write down are some of the ones that people will repeat back to you. But that in your bones, you are. So anyway, thank you so much for giving me your precious time this evening and the privilege of sharing some thoughts around who do you need to be, what do you need to do to get where you want to go. And it starts with where we're thinking. And we become better when we spend more time shifting from below the line to above the line with no judgment, a little bit of compassion. So thank you. Good night.